Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. A peaceful veteran's life deep in the Georgia woods is shattered when a ruthless HOA blocks his only road illegally. What starts as a petty neighborhood dispute spirals into sabotage, legal warfare, and revenge. One man, one easement, and zero tolerance for tyranny. I've never been the kind of man who looks for trouble. Hell, if anything, I spent the better part of my life learning how to avoid it. First in the Army, then in the fire systems business. You want peace? You learn how to protect it. And for the last 6 years, peace lived with me here. 10 acres of northern Georgia woods, open sky, and a long gravel road that wound its way from my front gate to the county highway. No neighbors on my land, no HOA, no damned committee meetings about the color of my shed. Just me, my tools, my dog, and a converted aircraft hangar that served as both my workshop and occasional sanctuary. Technically, the gravel road passed through a place called Lakeside Haven. Nice enough name for a neighborhood built around a man-made pond, cookie-cutter homes with pastel shutters, fake lawn mailboxes, and families who liked to pretend they were on the cover of a Southern Living magazine. That road had existed long before any of their houses did. I had the papers to prove it. A recorded easement from 1992 that gave my property legal access through the stretch of road that ran between their manicured cul-de-sacs and my woods. Most folks from Lakeside Haven never gave me trouble. They knew the road wasn't theirs. And even if they didn't like the sight of my dusty pickup passing through once or twice a day, they never said it out loud. That changed when the new HOA board took over. I first noticed something was off during one of my supply runs into town. As I pulled past their welcome sign, a rock slab with the words "A Peaceful Community for Families" etched in too clean font, a woman in a visor and tight khakis gave me a stare that could skin a deer. She didn't wave. She just stood there, arms crossed, mouth puckered, watching me like I was bringing rabies in with the exhaust fumes. A week later, a letter came, dropped off in my mailbox by some kid on a scooter. No postage, no envelope, just HOA letterhead and a passive-aggressive font. It read, "Dear property occupant, residents have raised concerns regarding the volume and type of traffic traveling through our community. As per Lakeside Haven guidelines, we encourage all traffic to remain limited to community members and guests. Non-residents are advised to seek alternate routes. Regards, Karen Langdon, HOA President, Karen Langdon." I'd never heard the name before, but I could already picture the haircut. I ignored the note. Not because I'm some rebel, I just knew my rights. That easement was ironclad. They had no legal standing to encourage anything but maybe their own kids to finish their vegetables. Then came the morning walk with my dog, a good old mutt named Bear who thinks every squirrel is an enemy combatant. We were halfway down the trail that skirts the back edge of my land when I noticed two people standing just off the road, near the property line. One of them was that same visor-wearing woman. The other was some wiry guy with a clipboard and an expression like someone had farted in church. I called out friendly enough, "Can I help you folks?" She didn't answer, just turned and walked away, high and stiff, heels stabbing the gravel like she wanted the earth to apologize. The clipboard guy mumbled something about drainage impact, and I knew right then they were sniffing around for excuses. Couple days later, one of my cameras caught a man in a polo shirt stopping to take photos of my truck tires. Not the truck, the tires. I assumed they'd accuse me next of dragging communist mud into their gated Eden. Then the real complaint started. One HOA email. I don't know how they got my address, but I suspect it involved one of their husbands being a little too cozy with the county GIS system, accused me of excessive vehicle usage and degradation of neighborhood road quality due to non-standard agricultural traffic. Agricultural? Lady, it's a pickup, not a goddamn combine harvester. The next message was worse. It said my presence negatively affected the perception of property value and requested that I cease routine access through Lakeside Haven until a formal access arrangement could be discussed. Read, pay up, or find another route. I responded with a scanned copy of the easement, stamped and recorded. No reply. That night, as I stood on the porch sipping coffee and listening to the wind rustle the pines, I caught myself staring down the road. It was still open. Still mine to use, but for the first time in years, I felt it. Pressure. Something was coming, and it wasn't going to be polite. It started like any other morning. I was halfway through frying up some bacon. Bear was pacing near the door with that twitchy, "Hurry up, I gotta pee" look, and the sun had just started bleeding through the pine line on the eastern edge of the property. Peaceful, ordinary, the kind of slow Georgia morning I'd grown to worship. Then Bear barked, not his usual squirrel's back bark. This was sharp, aggressive, alert. I stepped out onto the porch with my mug in hand and froze mid-sip. Down the gravel road, maybe 100 yards from my property line, something metallic gleamed in the sun. At first, I thought maybe a delivery truck had broken down or someone had dropped a trailer, until I saw the shimmer of fresh chain-link fencing, thick steel posts in concrete footings, and, right in the middle of the road, a brand new set of electronic security gates. Black powder-coated iron, looked expensive, looked permanent. And dead center on the gate, bolted with smug precision, was a large reflective sign that read, "Private HOA Road. Members only. No trespassing." My jaw clenched so tight I nearly cracked a molar. I grabbed the truck keys, called Bear back in, and drove up to the gate. The keypad blinked red. No intercom, no code, just silence. Behind it, nothing moved, just the stillness of a neighborhood that knew damn well what it had done. I backed up, tried to pull into the woods and find another way around, but the terrain was unforgiving. The heavy rain from last week had turned most of the paths to mush, and I didn't have the clearance to try cutting cross-country without risking axle damage. This wasn't a minor inconvenience. They'd blocked my only access to the county road. I turned the truck around and called the number on the HOA letterhead from last week. No answer. I called again. And again. Finally, on the fourth ring, a voice answered, sweet, syrupy, smug. Lakeside Haven Association, this is Karen Langdon. Karen, it's Lucas Draven. A pause. I could hear her settle into the role, like a bad actor slipping into character. Yes, Mr. Draven, how can I help you today? You put up a gate across a road that services a legal easement to my property. Oh, she said lightly. We didn't put anything on your property, Mr. Draven. The road belongs to the HOA. And as per the updated board protocols, we've decided to restrict non-member access to protect the integrity and safety of our community. Karen, I have a recorded easement. That road is my legal access. You can't block it. You're welcome to apply for HOA membership, she offered, as if extending an olive branch made of barbed wire. Our bylaws require a review period and community vote. If approved, we'll provide you with a gate access code. And if I don't apply, a pause, then with ice in her tone, then you'll need to find an alternative route, perhaps a helicopter if you're so inclined. She hung up. I stared at my phone for a good 10 seconds before I threw it onto the passenger seat and slammed my palms against the steering wheel hard enough to make the horn scream. I dealt with bureaucracy before. The Army teaches you how to navigate a minefield of idiocy. But this was no misunderstanding. This was calculated. I drove straight to the county sheriff's office. The deputy behind the desk was polite, but clearly out of his depth. After scanning through my papers, the deed, the easement filing, aerial maps, he scratched his chin and said, Mr. Draven, I believe you, but this ain't criminal. It's a civil matter. Civil matter? I growled. They've locked me out of my own land. They didn't enter your property. They just blocked theirs. Your recourse is through civil court. Injunction, maybe. File a grievance. It'll take a few weeks. Weeks. I couldn't wait weeks to access a public road I had every right to use, so I did what I should have done the moment the phone call ended. I went home, opened my old gun safe, and pulled out the fireproof case that held every legal scrap of my land. The original easement, recorded on thick, yellowing paper with the county seal from 1992. The plat maps showing the route. The parcel boundaries marked by hand from a time before any of these prefab homes even existed. I scanned the entire file, backed it up, and then submitted an official complaint to the county's Land Use and Zoning Department. I included a notarized statement and video footage of the newly erected gate. Then I filed a separate complaint with the district attorney's office, citing obstruction of legal access and interference with property rights. That night, as the porch light buzzed above me and Bear snored on the floorboards, I stared down that gravel road, now capped with steel and smugness, and realized that this wasn't about road quality or neighborhood peace. This was a siege. They were trying to force me to bend, to crawl through their little process, kiss the ring, and pay dues to an organization I never agreed to join. And if they thought a gate was going to be enough to make me kneel, they'd picked the wrong damn veteran. There are moments when anger turns into clarity. That's exactly where I found myself the next morning, standing in my workshop with the hum of fluorescent lights above and a pot of burnt coffee stinging my nose. I'd already been up for hours. Couldn't sleep. Not with that gate out there, locked like a smug little snub at everything I'd built. I wasn't just mad, I was motivated. First thing I did was get on the phone with my real estate attorney, Mitchell Carruthers, old Army buddy, now the meanest bastard in a courtroom this side of the Mississippi. Told him what happened. Sent him the easement scans, time-stamped drone footage from last week showing the road wide open and new footage with the gate. He didn't say much, just, I'll draft the filings. You're going to want a land survey done ASAP. Damn right I did. I called up a private surveyor, Andrew Linwood, younger guy, sharp as a nail, and not afraid to get his boots dirty. He agreed to come out the same afternoon. While I waited, I drove to the county recorder's office and requested certified copies of every document tied to my parcel, including easements, prior zoning variances, and the original subdivision records from before the HOA even existed. The clerk raised an eyebrow when I slammed 5 document requests on her desk before 9 a.m. You fighting a sale? No, ma'am, I said. I'm fighting stupidity. Back at the ranch, I walked Linwood through the boundary lines. He marked out the precise GPS coordinates of the easement, confirmed the width of the roadway, and even took soil samples by the gate to prove recent post-installation. They drilled these footings less than 48 hours ago, he muttered. That's fresh concrete. No permit. None that I can find, he added. This was a backdoor job. Perfect. By late evening, Mitchell had filed an emergency motion with the Superior Court requesting a temporary injunction, basically a demand that the gate be unlocked immediately to restore access while the case worked its way through the system. I signed a sworn affidavit, added a declaration from Linwood, and attached a map overlay showing the road's existence going back to 1978. Then we hit send. At this point, I was hopeful. Tired, but hopeful. That hope evaporated the next morning. There was a manila envelope duct taped to my mailbox. Inside, a typed letter on HOA letterhead, signed, of course, by Her Majesty Karen Langdon. Mr. Draven, as you are not a registered member of Lakeside Haven Homeowners Association and your property does not fall under our jurisdiction, you are currently in violation of association policies by utilizing our internal roadways. This behavior constitutes unauthorized use of private infrastructure per Section 6.1 of the HOA Access Agreement, which governs all movement within our private road system. Non-members must cease usage unless approved by the board. Should you wish to request access, a monthly maintenance fee of $250 will be required, along with an application for membership. Your continued usage without compliance will be considered trespassing and subject to enforcement. Enforcement. I let out a laugh so bitter even Bear looked up. They'd finally said the quiet part out loud. Pay us or walk. But here's the kicker. There is no HOA access agreement that applies to me. I'm not in their development. I never signed anything. Their rules don't mean a damn thing to my land, but they're banking on one thing. People folding. I don't fold. So I wrote my own letter. I included copies of the court filing, a reminder of the existing easement, and a notice that any further restriction would be considered willful interference with property access. Then I took the liberty of copying the county zoning office, the sheriff's department, and the district attorney. Just for fun, I also sent a copy to a local property rights watchdog group that loves nothing more than roasting overreaching HOAs on live radio. Two can play this game. By the end of the week, Mitchell forwarded me a response from the HOA's attorney, some poor sap named Glenn Halpern, who clearly regretted taking the case. He tried to argue that the original easement may have expired or was no longer valid due to changes in neighborhood governance, which, legally speaking, is about as sound as arguing the moon should pay rent. I knew what they were trying to do. Delay. Bluff. Bleed me dry with filings and fees until I gave up or signed their little papers. They didn't realize they were dealing with someone who spent 12 years designing fire suppression systems for government bunkers. I live for worst-case scenarios. By Friday, the HOA had doubled down. They disabled the gate keypad entirely. When I tried to call again, I was told any further communication would need to go through legal channels only. Karen had blocked me on her personal phone and even posted on the neighborhood Facebook page that I was harassing the board. Oh, and they weren't done. That same day, they erected a second fence, perpendicular to the road just inside their property line, right up against the first. If I ever did get the gate open, I'd be staring down another barrier. Layered defense. Cute. I wasn't intimidated. I was enraged, and rage makes a hell of a fuel. So I printed out a new sign, laminated it, and hammered it into the dirt right at the edge of their gate. Legal easement in effect. Blocking access is a violation of Georgia Property Code. Surveillance active, injunction pending. You have been warned. Then I mounted 2 additional cameras, high, infrared, motion activated, tied to cloud storage and a cellular uplink. If they so much as breathed in my direction, I'd have it in triplicate. Let them play games. I brought documents. A week passed. I'd like to say it got quieter, that things started to cool down once legal filings were in place and the county was looped in. But no. The bastards doubled down. The second row of fencing wasn't just symbolic. They added concrete footings, ran it in a zigzag like some kind of HOA Maginot line, and slapped on another sign. Trespassers will be reported to local authorities. I took a picture, sent it to Mitchell with the subject line, Cold War Suburban Edition. Then, like clockwork, came the escalation. I got an official letter, certified mail this time because now they wanted to play fancy. Inside, a notice from Lakeside Haven HOA informing me that my unauthorized presence within the community had triggered a formal complaint. Attached was a copy of a police report they'd filed, accusing me of unlawful use of private infrastructure, vandalism of association property, reckless driving within a residential zone. Reckless driving? I don't think my pickup ever broke 25 on that gravel road. And vandalism? You mean the laminated sign warning them about the lawsuit? I called the sheriff's department, asked them about the complaint. The deputy was polite but cagey. We're obligated to file the report when submitted by a recognized residential entity, he said. Doesn't mean charges are filed. It just opens a case. Great. Now I was a case. I wasn't surprised. HOA boards like this one were notorious for throwing spaghetti at the wall, hoping something sticks. But they weren't just throwing now. They were launching a full-blown legal and psychological siege, trying to bury me in paper cuts and procedural sand traps. It was war by attrition, HOA style, and it got better. 2 days later, I came home to find a notice pinned to a wooden stake just off the trail near the eastern fence line. It read, Notice of Access Fee Requirement, effective immediately. Non-member use of Lakeside Haven Road is subject to a monthly maintenance and access fee in the amount of $250 USD, payable to the association treasurer. Failure to remit payment will result in legal pursuit and formal complaint to the county code enforcement. They even included a damn QR code. I took a picture of myself flipping it off and posted it on a private forum for rural landowners. Got 200 reactions and a DM from a guy in South Carolina who said, Bro, I'd bulldoze that fence. Tempting. But I wasn't about to give them something real to hit me with. So I responded the only way I could, with facts. I drafted a second complaint to the Georgia Real Estate Commission, this time including their attempt to charge fees for access tied to a pre-existing easement. That, my friend, is a serious no-no. I also submitted an official inquiry to the County Code Enforcement Office, asking whether the HOA had permits for the second fence or the gate, or any of the new signage cluttering what should be a legally accessible road. Spoiler, they didn't. Then I found out something else. The gate, both rows of it, were hooked into the neighborhood's electrical system, including a backup solar panel rig HOA installed last summer, which meant their precious blockade was technically a modification to shared infrastructure. So I made one more call, this time to a local investigative blog that had a reputation for torching small-town overreach stories. I gave them the rundown. Unauthorized road restrictions, gate installed over a recorded easement, fines for non-existent services, and now fabricated police reports. They were giddy. I love this story, the journalist said. It's HOA versus Zell. Veteran landowner. It's like David versus suburban Goliath. We're going to run this. And then the cherry on top, I received a voicemail. No caller ID, with a distorted voice, obviously modulated by some app saying, "You're making things worse for yourself. Pay the fee. Join the community." Or watch it all get a lot harder. That was a threat. Dumb, vague, cowardly, but a threat nonetheless. I reported it, had the audio transcribed and submitted it with the rest of the mounting file. Mitchell added it to the injunction motion and made sure it got into the hands of the judge. The pressure was real, but I wasn't cracking. What these people didn't understand was that they weren't just screwing with a stubborn old rancher. They were playing chicken with someone who'd been trained not to blink. You ever have one of those moments where the universe stops just long enough to smirk in your direction? That happened the day I opened an old filing box and saw it. A deed, dated June 2019, with my name printed in bold. I'd almost forgotten about it. A narrow strip of land, 20 feet wide and 200 long, running right through the easement corridor, technically a zoning leftover from the county's road realignment 20 years ago. No one claimed it. It showed up at a delinquent parcel auction, and I snagged it for $200 and a six-pack of Coors for the clerk who stayed late to process the paperwork. And guess where it was located? Directly under the damn gate. They hadn't just blocked my easement. They'd built their precious monument to suburban authoritarianism on my land. I sat there at my kitchen table staring at the deed like I'd just pulled Excalibur from a rock. Then I laughed, the kind of laugh that doesn't stop right away. Bear looked at me like I'd lost my mind. I hadn't. I'd just won a war they didn't know they'd started. By mid-morning, I'd already called Linwood, the surveyor, and scheduled an emergency on-site verification. He came out the same day, confirmed the parcel coordinates, pulled GPS, and snapped high-res images showing the gate footings overlapping my property by at least 18 feet. I wasn't subtle. I printed a massive sign, mounted it on treated lumber, and installed it just 10 feet from the gate. "You are trespassing on private land. Structure erected without permission. Removal imminent. Smile. You're on camera." I also updated the camera array, thermal, long-range, full-motion tracking. If anyone so much as sneezed near my fence, I'd get a notification before the tissues hit the ground. Of course, I filed a cease and desist through Mitchell. He attached the parcel deed, the surveyor's report, time-stamped drone footage, and copies of the new signage. We also sent a pre-litigation resolution demand. Lawyer speak for. Take the damn gate down before we take your HOA apart like a rusted lawnmower. And then it got dark. That night, just before midnight, I woke to the sound of bear barking, frenzied, primal. I grabbed the shotgun from beside the door and stepped out barefoot onto the porch. There was smoke, a faint, ugly thread of it drifting across the trees. I ran to the back of the property, near the edge of the old aircraft hangar I'd converted into my workshop. That's when I saw it. The eastern wall of the building was scorched black, charred from the ground up. The gravel near the foundation glittered with broken glass, the pungent sting of gasoline still lingering in the cold air. In the corner, half melted, was a glass bottle with what looked like a burnt rag stuffed inside. Molotov cocktail. Someone tried to burn me out. Fortunately, I'd installed a carbon dioxide flood system inside the building last year, more out of habit than need. It activated automatically and smothered the flames before they spread, but part of the wall was toast. Literally. And some of my gear was beyond saving. Tens of thousands of dollars. Easy. I called the fire department, then the sheriff. They confirmed it. Attempted arson, likely accelerant-based. No suspects, no witnesses. But the fire chief pulled me aside after and said, "You pissed someone off. Be real careful." The next morning, I reviewed the camera footage. 3 masked individuals. One with a hoodie that said, "Proud to be HOA strong." Not exactly criminal masterminds. They parked just out of frame, walked in through the woods, did their work, and ran. I sent everything to Mitchell. He forwarded it to the DA's office, the insurance company, and the local news. I also installed 2 new signs. Attempted arson reported to authorities. All activity monitored. Criminal charges pending. But it wasn't just me reacting anymore. Something snapped in the HOA, too. An anonymous email landed in my inbox the next day, sent from a burner address. No subject, just, "She's going too far. I didn't sign up for this. I have kids." Attached was a PDF dump of internal HOA messages, screenshots from a private group chat between board members. Karen's words were all over it. "He'll give up once we squeeze him. We control the narrative. Burn him out, not literally, unless someone's got a match. LOL. I forwarded everything to Mitchell and the sheriff. Then I sat back on my porch, shotgun across my knees, watching that ridiculous gate in the distance. They weren't just trying to win anymore. They were trying to erase me. Problem was, I'm real hard to erase. I always imagined my first court appearance in this town would be for something mundane, a property dispute, a zoning appeal, maybe telling a judge that no, I didn't know my dog had chased the mayor's cat up a tree. But this was a circus. The day of the preliminary hearing felt like stepping into a powder keg made of khaki slacks and suburban delusion. The courthouse lobby was packed. Reporters, residents, a handful of Lakeside Haven's most opinionated retirees. Karen Langdon arrived, flanked by her attorney and two board members who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. She wore a pearl necklace and the smile of a televangelist under indictment. I didn't smile. I just nodded once, cool and slow. Inside, the judge was a no-nonsense type, retired Navy, thick glasses, and a voice like gravel in a cement mixer. The moment he saw the file, he let out a low whistle. "You mean to tell me," he said, flipping through exhibits, "that this man's only road access to a public highway was blocked by a homeowners association whose territory he doesn't even live in?" Karen's lawyer tried to jump in, but the judge raised a finger. "Hold that thought. Let's walk through this slowly." Mitchell did what Mitchell does best. He laid it all out, methodically, surgically. He presented the 1992 easement, notarized and filed with the county. Then the surveyor's report showing the gate sitting 18 feet into my parcel. Then the deed to that very parcel purchased in 2019, clean and uncontested. "Mr. Draven not only holds the legal right to access this road," Mitchell said, "he owns the soil beneath the very gate they installed to block him." Then came the kicker. We introduced the altered cadastral map, the one the HOA had submitted to the county office, with my parcel mysteriously absent. The court clerk compared it to the official record. The difference was blatant, and the alteration so sloppy it still had the wrong zip code. Then we dropped the screen captures. Internal HOA messages leaked from the burner email. The judge read the lines slowly, squinting. "Burn him out, not literally, unless someone's got a match. We control the narrative. Gates in place. He can bark all he wants." Karen's face went paler than drywall. Her attorney tried damage control. "Your Honor, these messages were obtained without consent. Their context is—" The judge cut him off. "I don't need context to smell smoke, counselor." Then Mitchell handed over the fire department report. The forensic photo of the half-melted Molotov, the sheriff's incident log, the thermal camera footage showing masked figures approaching my hangar. The timestamp aligned almost exactly with HOA board meeting chat logs. It was enough to make half the courtroom gasp, and Karen's two board members start whispering furiously behind her. Then came the moment I'll never forget. The judge leaned forward, resting both elbows on the bench. "Ms. Langdon, do you understand what obstruction of property access means under Georgia law?" Karen opened her mouth. "Don't answer that," her lawyer hissed. "Do you also understand the severity of submitting altered county records?" The judge continued, voice rising just slightly. "Do you understand what it means when a civilian has to install fire suppression systems to defend against community leadership?" Karen looked like she was trying to melt into her seat. "Enough," the judge said finally. "I am granting the temporary injunction, effective immediately. The gate will be dismantled within 72 hours. Any further obstruction will result in criminal contempt charges." He turned to Karen's lawyer. "And if I find even a trace of authorization tied to that fake cadastral map, your client can expect a referral to the district attorney for fraud, falsification of public records, and malicious interference with property rights." I didn't gloat. I didn't blink. I just nodded and looked straight at Karen as the bailiff handed her a packet of compliance instructions. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. The local blog that had run the story now had live coverage with the headline, "HOA tyrants brought down by landowner, judge slams suburban sabotage." A handful of Lakeside Haven residents approached me, quietly, cautiously. One apologized. Another thanked me. One old guy in a fishing hat muttered, "About damn time someone shut her down." By nightfall, I had 3 new voicemails. One from the county offering assistance in the gate removal process, one from a former HOA board member resigning on principle, and one from a man identifying himself as federal counsel, wanting to speak about potential civil rights violations if this went further. But my favorite moment came later when Mitchell, half smirking, handed me a copy of the court transcript. On the last page, handwritten by the judge himself, The defendant HOA has demonstrated gross negligence, coordinated harassment, and disregard for recorded property rights. Further violations will be met with maximum penalties. Game, set. Precedent. The gates came down 2 days later, not slowly, not respectfully, but with the squeal of steel grinding under the teeth of a county commission backhoe and the high-pitched wail of HOA pride dying in real time. I watched from the hood of my truck, arms folded, coffee in hand, Bear sprawled at my feet like it was movie night. There was a small crowd, neighbors, county officials, even a couple of reporters, and none of them looked sad to see it go. One of the guys running the excavator muttered, "Never thought I'd be tearing down a gate built by soccer moms." The first metal post snapped clean in half, fell sideways with a clang. The keypad unit ripped off the side like it had been glued on by a toddler with a grudge. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The work spoke for itself. Within 3 hours, the entire obstruction, both the inner and outer fences, was gone. All that remained was a churned patch of soil and a scarred gravel line where the HOA had tried to draw their boundary in concrete. But the damage to them was just getting started. Mitchell filed a motion for damages the very next morning. Based on the court's findings, the attempted obstruction of access, the falsified documents, and the resulting vandalism and arson attempt, he requested compensation for property damage and loss of tools, $87,000, restitution for legal fees, surveyors, and filings, $42,000, emotional distress and punitive damages, $1,300,000. The judge didn't even blink. The actions taken by this HOA, he said from the bench, represent not just negligence, but a coordinated campaign of intimidation, fraud, and suppression of lawful property rights. I am awarding full damages. Final judgment, $1,430,000. Payable within 60 days or subject to seizure of HOA assets. It was like someone hit them with a freight train full of justice. HOA board members started dropping like flies. First, the treasurer resigned, then the secretary, then the communications director, all issuing public statements about not condoning recent decisions. But the main event came a week later. Karen Langdon was arrested. The charges weren't minor: falsification of public records, obstruction of legal access, criminal conspiracy, and, based on the messages, potential incitement to commit property damage. They cuffed her on her front porch while her neighbors filmed from behind bushes and SUVs. The same people who once applauded her speeches about neighborhood unity now shared videos of her in handcuffs with captions like, "HOA Queen Dethroned." I watched the footage on my laptop that night with a whiskey in hand and Bear snoring on the rug. No part of me felt sorry. You don't light fires and then whine when the wind changes direction. In the aftermath, the HOA scrambled. The insurance policy didn't cover criminal misconduct. Legal fees started piling up. Residents began filing individual lawsuits for special assessments they now discovered were illegally collected. Within a month, Lakeside Haven HOA had burned through its reserve fund and filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The county placed the community under administrative oversight. I got a letter from one of the remaining board members, a meek apology followed by a surprising offer. They wanted me to serve as a consulting advisor for future access issues and community land use. I didn't laugh out loud, but it was close. I wrote one sentence in reply: "You already had your consultation. It cost you a gate and $1 million." Then I drove out to the spot where the gate once stood. The land was mine again, open, scarred, but free. I cleared the remaining debris, brought in a crew to level the grade, and paved a clean asphalt strip from my main trail to the county road. Smooth, accessible, legal. Then I put up my own sign. Steel, laser etched, backlit at night. Private property. Access by recorded right only. HO not recognized. LD simple, sharp, permanent. And right next to it, I mounted one of the old gate's shattered hinges on a plaque that read, "Trophy of Suburbia." Let 'em remember. It's been 4 months since the gates came down. The scar where they stood is barely visible now. The gravel's been regraded, the weeds have crept back in, and my asphalt strip gleams under the sun like a silver scar running straight through the bones of Lakeside Haven. It doesn't bother them anymore. They've learned to live with it, or at least they've stopped pretending they can control it. I drive through that corridor almost every day. No more stares, no more sideways glances or forced smiles. Some wave now, awkward, unsure, like people who've seen someone survive a bear attack and aren't quite sure whether to ask for a story or offer condolences. Karen, she's still fighting her charges. Her lawyer filed 3 continuances, 2 suppression motions, and 1 truly desperate plea for character reference from the local garden club. Word is she might take a plea deal if the DA doesn't dig deeper into that burner phone nonsense. The HOA technically still exists, but it's more like a hollowed-out corpse someone forgot to bury. The new interim board consists of 3 terrified dads and a woman who once cried because someone's Halloween decorations were too scary. They don't make demands anymore. They issue requests. Politely. I heard through the grapevine they canceled dues for 6 months just to stop more lawsuits. Can't say I blame them, but none of that's really the point. The point is, I still wake up, step outside, and breathe. I still run my tools in the hangar, which has a brand new firewall and security rig now. I replaced everything that burned. Better stuff. Smarter systems. The trail cameras still run. Not because I expect trouble, but because vigilance isn't paranoia when you've been lit on fire once. And sometimes, just sometimes, I'll get a message, a letter, a text, even a knock at the gate from someone who's heard the story. Ranchers, landowners, one guy from Alabama who said, "Man, they tried to find me for flying a flag on my own porch." I thought I was going crazy until I found your case online. Apparently, my story hit local news, then regional blogs, then some national libertarian podcast with an audience of about 7 million angry uncles. Didn't see that coming. I never wanted to be a symbol. I just wanted to be left alone. But maybe that's the problem. When people like Karen aren't checked, they assume silence means consent, that no one's going to fight back. That paperwork and fences and fake bylaws are stronger than truth, persistence, and one deeply stubborn man who reads the fine print. They were wrong. Bear's old now, slower, sleeps more than he barks. But he still perks up every time I start the truck and drive down the road, our road, past the spot where HOA arrogance used to live. Sometimes I stop there, just for a minute. I look at the sign I planted, private property. Access by recorded right only. HOA not recognized. It doesn't blink, doesn't move, doesn't threaten. It just exists. Like truth, like stone, like the kind of freedom you don't ask permission for. And in the wind, if you listen close, you can almost hear the gates squeal again, but only once. They never came back.